It's signing week here at 24/7 Sports, and we are taking a look at the Longhorns 2024 recruiting class as they get ready for life in the SEC. Texas ranks 6th in the overall rankings and 3rd in the SEC, just behind Georgia and Alabama. Hank South of Horns 24/7 and Hudson Standish here with me now for more on this class. We'll start with the top prospects in this class. Steve Sarkisian has landed several of them, including 5-star linebacker Colin Simmons and 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo. Hudson, can you give us an overview of these top recruits?
Absolutely. Colin Simmons and Ryan Wingo finished as 5 stars in the final top 247 update of the cycle. Brandon Baker was just on the fringe out of Mater Dei. It's a really intriguing class for Texas because they have their best season since 2009 and finished with what seems to be a pretty good group. I mean, Colin Simmons at Duncanville High School, really one of the more explosive edge rushers in the country. You want to talk about a guy that has the first step that's immediately available to play in Austin, and you don't have to rush him into being a 3-down player. He can be a situational pass rusher his first year in Austin. And then you take a look at Ryan Wingo. Wingo is one of the more physically impressive wide receivers in the 2024 cycle. Obviously has a ton of juice, legit track background, but in addition to that, he can make plays after the catch. And considering Texas lost A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, Jatavian Sanders, there's going to be a lot of production that needs to be, filled by new players. And while they had an intriguing portal class, Wingo's the guy that can kind of take the top off the defense. It's going to be really intriguing to see how Steve Sarkisian uses Ryan Wingo in his offense. And then the last one with Brandon Baker. You want to talk about just a high floor offensive tackle, somebody that he probably won't need to play immediately, but he absolutely could if he needed. Plays at one of the best programs in the entire country in Mater Dei in the state of California. Somebody that has the requisite arm length, size, the demeanor could maybe improve a little bit, but for the most part, I think Brandon Baker's a stud, and Kyle Flood continues to just add pieces to this Texas offensive line room.
Texas had a couple late additions to the secondary in this class. Kobe Black committed in mid-December, and then Xavier Filsaime flipped from Florida on the December signing day. Hank, how important are these two to the defense?
Yeah, it's huge. I think if you look at Texas's 2023 season, as successful as they were making the college football playoff, one of the vulnerabilities at times was the back end of the defense, and that was an area they really needed to address in this cycle. And they did so both, from the prep ranks and the transfer portal. But, two guys in Kobe Black and Xavier Filsaime, just outstanding players. Kobe Black was obviously a top target for much of the cycle. When Steve Sarkisian talked about him at his signing day press conference, he talked a lot about how a lot of his highlights are on the offensive side of the ball, but he's he can play all 3 positions in the secondary. He's a really versatile playmaker, and obviously has an older brother has been really successful at Oklahoma State as well. But a big time addition there. Xavier Filsaime, another one that Texas came in late, officially offered him right before the Red River Shootout, and then we're able to get him on campus in November and then flip him from Florida late. And so, that kind of just goes to show this recruiting ability of the staff, be able to change his mind, late in the process. But another kid that's, Steve Sarkisian said he was born to play defensive back. He has great range, coverage ability, will hit you. His highlights kind of speak for themselves. So, 2 massive additions in a cycle that they really needed to get it done and get these guys in this class to kind of reinforce, their secondary in 2024 entering the SEC.
Hudson, I'll go back to you. 22 players in this class. Who do you think is the most underrated prospect?
Working on the rankings, I just really fell in love with Jordan Washington out of Langham Creek in the Houston area. I mentioned earlier that the Texas is losing Jatavian Sanders. This is a guy that I think eventually could replace that production. Maybe he's not ready right away, but he has the frame and athleticism to eventually become a legitimate NFL draft candidate from the tight end position. As you can see, played a lot of wide receiver in high school, but he is a massive frame, nearly a 83-inch wingspan. And as he continues throughout his development, I really think that he could take the next step and, become a true contributor for Texas down the line.
All right, Hank, you cover this team up close. So as Texas transitions to a new conference, how have you seen the staff adjust their roster building to fit the SEC style of play? And how confident are you the Longhorns will be ready?
Well, I think we got, the best, litmus test this past season going into Tuscaloosa at night and beating Nick Saban coached Alabama team. So I think they're ready in that regard. But it's interesting. I asked Steve Sarkisian over the summer at the coaches convention. This 2024 class is the first class you're going into the SEC with. And how does that change your approach? Does that change style of players you go after? Footprints you want to establish. And he said, his answer was really interesting. Was saying, when he first got to Texas, he assessed the roster and he was trying to compare it to where do they need to be, and he looked at the college football playoff, and most of the teams in the college football playoff at that point were from the SEC, the Alabamas, the Georgias, and he looked at their rosters, decided or trying to figure out what they needed to turn Texas into, or recruit for Texas, and his 3 points were you got to be big up front, you have to be physical up front, you need speed on the perimeter, you need high football IQ. And you go down this class in 2024, both from high school and the transfer portal, and I think that checks all those boxes. In his signing day press conference, Sark talked about, he mentioned all those things, high football IQ, physical, speed. You add Ryan Wingo, you add Isaiah Bond, that speed on the perimeter. Big up front, Brandon Baker. You have Alex January in Melvin Hills, and then Tia Savea coming from the portal out of Arizona. So, I think this roster, how it's been, constructed over the past couple of cycles as they've really established themselves in Austin, is absolutely SEC ready. And I think we'll see Texas, really make a splash into the SEC in 2024.
All right, exciting times ahead in Austin. Hank South and Hudson Standish, thanks so much. And for more Texas football and recruiting news, be sure to check out horns247.com. Hank and his staff got you covered from signing day to the postseason and everything in between. That's horns247.com.